Hello there, and welcome to EPA Insights. I'm Brad from the assessment team here at Highfield, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Pharmacy Services Assistant Standard, IFATE version 1.0. We want to share with you what we've learned since assessing on this standard. This includes an analysis of the grades and looking at any common trends, while gaining assessor feedback and customer feedback where we may have had queries in the past. We hope that you find this useful. Firstly, we are going to touch on the knowledge test, and then we're going to take a closer look at the other assessment methods, including the simulated observation with questions and answers, and the professional discussion. Finally, we'll be finishing off with some general hints and tips for the endpoint assessment. The exam is ideally taken by e-assessment. This can be invigilated by the assessor, employer, or our remote invigilation service. The exam consists of 90 questions worth 1 mark each, and 5 scenario-based questions worth 2 marks each. To gain a pass, the apprentice needs to achieve at least 33 marks, and at least 43 marks must be achieved for a distinction. The exam only accounted for 6% of the total failed assessments that we analysed. There is a mock paper available within the EPA resources section of our website for learners to utilise. Moving on to the simulated observation. Now, the apprentice will be observed in their normal place of work, either in person or remotely via web conferencing. The observation will last for a total of 1 hour and is made up of 2 tasks. Task 1 consists of the dispensing of medicines, and Task 2 consists of the receiving, storing and issuing of stock. There will be a 10-minute question and answer after each task to attempt any outstanding criteria. Any remaining time left over from the practical element will be carried over to the question and answers. If assessments are being carried out remotely, there must be a person available to operate the camera to provide a live video of the apprentice carrying out their tasks. An appropriate person or a checker must also be available to complete accuracy checks as part of the dispensing tasks. The simulated observation of Task 1. So we analysed a proportion of learner reports where learners had failed to pass the simulated observation. For each assessment criteria, you can see the proportion of learners who have either passed, failed, or not even attempted the assessment criteria. The proportion of brown means that learners in the main did not have the opportunity to attempt the criteria. We expect this to happen with distinction criteria, where there was not the opportunity to stretch to these due to time constraints. We've identified other criteria in red, where there are higher rates of learners who have attempted the criteria but unfortunately not passed. These seem to be the most common causes of failure within the observation. We'll go through these on the next few slides. The simulated observation of Task 2. So we analysed a proportion of learner reports where learners had failed to pass the simulated observation. For each assessment criteria, you can see the proportion of learners who have either failed, passed, or not attempted the assessment criteria. Again, we've identified in red the criteria where there are higher rates of learners who have attempted but unfortunately not passed these criteria. These seem to be the most common causes of failure within the observation Task 2. Let's look at some of the criteria that learners are attempting but not passing, starting with the most commonly failed pass criteria. So we have DS10, demonstrates the process to be followed in receiving and accurately logging of prescriptions, the accurate dispensing of appropriate medicines, and an understanding of any issues that arise from how medicines are taken. The trap with this one is learners not fully understanding what's being asked for. So in order to prepare your learners, explain how prescriptions are received electronically and physically, and fully explain how to check if a prescription is valid. Consider what issues can arise when dispensing and how medication is taken. TWA demonstrates or explains what in-process accuracy checks they would undertake. So the trap with this one is not carrying out the correct accuracy checks. So in order to prepare learners, ask them to demonstrate what correct accuracy checks are being carried out, including checking labels and the actual items against the prescription. TW7 demonstrates how they work within the standard operating procedures, otherwise known as SOPs, and why they are important in dispensing of medicines. So the trap with this one is the lack of knowledge of what SOPs are. In order to prepare learners, clearly articulate which SOPs are being followed and explain the importance of following these. Moving on to the merit and distinction criteria. So common areas of failure. What's consistent across these criteria are learners not being able to provide examples. So in order to prepare, we've provided some examples below. DS16 can give an example of when they have dealt with a customer who did not know how to use the supplied medicine correctly and explain what they did to assist that customer. In order to prepare, give an example of when they have assisted a customer and given advice. This could also be an internal customer. DS17 can suggest at least 2 improvements to the existing processes involved in the management of medicines, including when ordering, receiving and issuing pharmaceutical stock and what the improvement could be. So in order to prepare, have 2 improvements that could be made in relation to storing or issuing of stock in your setting. Finally, CO13 explains examples of possible solutions to problems involving the processing and storage of information and the impact that would have. So in order to prepare, consider what issues there could be relating to the processing and storing of customer information in their setting. Moving on to the professional discussion. So the professional discussion will last for 30 minutes and is a structured discussion between the apprentice and the assessor. The professional discussion must take place in a suitable environment free from distractions. The portfolio of evidence is not directly assessed, but is a key component to supporting that professional discussion. It's advisable for the apprentice to bring this with them and be familiar with its contents so it can be easily navigated during that discussion. The employer may be present for this method at the learner's request to support but not lead that discussion, and for the purpose of confirming any information at the assessor's request. We analysed a proportion of learner reports where learners had failed to pass the professional discussion. For each assessment criteria, you can see the proportion of learners who have either passed, failed or not attempted the assessment criteria. The high proportion of brown means that learners in the main did not have the opportunity to attempt the criteria. We expect this to happen with the distinction criteria, where there was not the opportunity to stretch to these due to time constraints. We've identified other criteria where there are higher rates of learners who have attempted the criteria but unfortunately not passed. These seem to be the most common causes of failure within the professional discussion, which we'll take a look at on the next few slides. Let's take a look at some of the criteria that are most commonly failed during the professional discussion, starting with the pass criteria. PC12 demonstrates that they understand the importance of treating all other people as individuals and evidences how they promote equality, diversity and inclusion. The trap with this one is that no specific examples of equality, diversity and inclusion are available in the portfolio to discuss with the assessor in the professional discussion. Also, learners struggle to contextualise this to their workplace. In order to prepare, think of specific examples, even when the patient is not present, of how they demonstrate equality, diversity and inclusion. They should also include examples of how they demonstrate this within their development and within their teams. TW11 shows that they understand the importance of reflection in managing their personal performance and explains what they have learned from the good practice of their healthcare professionals. So the trap with this one is a lack of quality evidence in the portfolio, such as a personal development plan or a PDP, including one-to-one reviews. Learners can't contextualise these documents or provide good examples to the assessor. In order to prepare, reflect on their own practice, including feedback from managers from the one-to-ones. Also prepare examples of good practice that they've picked up from colleagues. TW13 demonstrates that they can contribute effectively in the development of themselves and their colleagues, and that they can explain the positive contribution made by the team. So the trap with this one is that learners can't relate the development to themselves and how they've passed this on to others during their apprenticeship. There are a lack of examples in that portfolio. In order to prepare, explain how they have been involved in training other members of staff and how this has impacted on their job role. Explain why it's important to help develop their team. Moving on to the most common areas of failure during the professional discussion. CO17. Explain the principles behind GDPR and its importance in the pharmaceutical context. The trap with this one is that learners struggle to understand the importance of the GDPR principles and how it relates back to the pharmacy practices and in the impact of not adhering to these. In order to prepare, explain what GDPR is and what its principles are. Explain how they relate this to the pharmacy and what the impact can be if the principles are not adhered to. CO18. Can give an example of where effective advice or referral has benefited a customer or a patient and what the positive consequences were. The trap with this one is a lack of examples to draw upon from the portfolio. In order to prepare, put examples into the portfolio and talk about specific prescription advice that you've given. Explain times you've promoted healthy lifestyle schemes. TW14 explains with 2 examples how they regularly contribute to team-based discussions and problem solving, and what the positive impact of their contributions have been. The trap with this one is trying to think of examples on the spot, a lack of preparation and a lack of examples within the portfolio. In order to prepare, provide 2 examples of how they make suggestions to their team on improving problems within the pharmacy or the team in general. What were the suggestions? How have these impacted the team? And do you have any documents within the portfolio to draw examples from? Some apprentices struggle to give specific examples in the professional discussion. It is important that learners provide real examples of the activities they have undertaken during their time on programme and use their portfolio to support this. And finally, moving on to the general hints and tips. EPA reports. So all learners will receive an EPA report. Use the EPA reports to analyse which particular areas of the assessment criteria your learner struggles on. This will help you to continuously improve the quality of your learning programmes. There are lots of helpful resources including mock tests and EPA kits with amplification to further describe the areas that will be assessed. Think about documents for learners also help them prepare for endpoint assessments. These are all available on our website. And last but certainly not least, mock assessments. These are a key tool at any level to help learners build confidence and practice. Ideally, carry out a mock exam, observation with question and answer, and a professional discussion with someone that they're not familiar with, just to help them prepare for the big day. And that's all from me. Thank you for watching.